Hello, class. I wanted to take a few minutes here to address the discussion board topic on GDP that I posted. I've read through them all. You've all done a very good job so far. I just think I wanted to add some things to what has been listed. But before I do that, let's go back to where we talked about before in chapters in the first unit, what you guys read about. And one of the things that was discussed there was the factors of production being land, capital, labor, and entrepreneurship. I'm kind of disappointed in the book that it didn't mention that all the theories that are based off of those factors of production moving forward on supply and demand were based off of a free market theory. Okay. Free market is another term for capitalism. And another way of saying that is that it just includes voluntary transactions. Okay. When you get into more socialist ideas, some of those transactions or the factors of production become controlled by other factors than a free market principle of supply and demand. Okay, so I wanted to mention that before we got started here. And another thing that wanted to mention that in today's political climate, I wanted to mention I'm a very fiscally conservative person. Okay, so when it comes to talking about policies moving forward, I want you to know straight up where I stand. And it is okay that if you have different points of view than me. What I'm hoping to do through this video and through some of the discussion board posts is create a discussion and hopefully make you guys critically think about some of the topics that are being discussed. Okay, so with that being said, let's talk about GDP. News outlets and economists use GDP because, in my opinion, it is the best number to use to get an overall view of an economy. Okay, we're not talking about the specific details because a lot of what you guys mentioned is saying is you were right in saying it does not give a full picture. But some people have mentioned that they do not think it's the best indicator. Well, think of it this way. This is what we base prosperity on and recessions and depressions. From page 85 in your book, if you look back at it, a recession is defined as a 6 month drop in GDP, or that is 2 quarters, because GDP is reported on a quarterly basis. So if our national GDP is dropped for 2 months or 2 quarters in a row, we are in a recession. That accompanies, that comes with job loss, people looking for work, not buying everything that they want to have. We're not producing as much. We're not consuming as much. Okay. So that is a bad thing overall. When recessions become prolonged for over a year or more, then it becomes known as a depression. So it is GDP is a very, very important figure. And yes, I agree. One of the biggest faults with GDP is when it comes to income disparity. Okay, because the study of economics is about the flow of cash and income disparity and stuff like that within a society. So we're talking about microeconomics and the big picture. GDP gives a great view of the big picture. Some of the other stuff within that you can learn, and we'll talk about in microeconomics, and it can be addressed in certain ways. One of the things Alex brought up in one of the discussion boards was the GPI, or the Genuine Progress Indicator. This is something that's fairly new, and I'm glad that he found it because I had planned on talking about it before he even found it. Because if you do a quick Google search on is GDP the best economic indicator, the second result that comes up is an article from Investopedia that talks about the Genuine Progress Indicator. Okay, so that is where I pulled all my information from on this. Plus, I remember talking about it a little bit back when I was in school, when I went through my economic classes. So just kind of let me fill you in a little bit more on what the GPI actually is. Okay, so it was founded in 1995 by a socially responsible think tank called Redefining Progress. So they had the idea that even as the book states, there are some things that are not caught up in GDP, okay, such as housework, pollution, and stuff like that was mentioned in the book. So this think tank, Redefining Progress, took some of these ideas and they decided they were going to come up with another indicator for how well a national economy is doing. So they start with the base numbers and the consumption part of GDP. So that is really the only thing that the GPI changes is it's going to make some adjustments to the base number on the GDP. So I have noted that it makes 9 adjustments to this number, okay? The first is income distribution. Okay, if the poor's wealth increases, it is going to increase the GPI number. If the wealth is going to the top, it is going to decrease the GPI number. Okay, this is one adjustment that I really do not have a quarrel with, because I will admit there is income disparity. So, but the problem comes in is how are you going to make those adjustments? And that comes with this whole thing, in my opinion, this whole GPI program is how the adjustments are made. And I would have to dig deeper into it to find out how they're actually adjusting and determining when the wealth is going to the poor or when the wealth is going to the top, and what do they determine as the top. Okay. GDP, on the other hand, yeah, it's just looking at the wealth created, but in the macro, in the big picture, the more wealth you have, more people are going to be wealthy. The poorest people in the United States are actually some are wealthier than some of the wealthiest people in the poor country in certain instances. Okay. Second thing that the GPI takes into is housework, volunteering, and higher education. In the article, it says, quote, it increases the GPI because of the benefit of an increasingly educated people. This is a highly subjective term here. How do you put a value, an economic value, I should say, on housework or volunteering? Because I would never, ever, ever dream of telling a woman that decided, or a man that decided to stay home with their children, that what they are doing had no value. But I can honestly say that it does not produce immediate economic value. Okay. So the value may be you're raising the kids and they're going to get a better education, and they're going to be able to provide for their family better in the future, or have a better future because of the sacrifice you are making by stepping out of the economy at that point in time. And then in the future, their benefit will show in the economy. That's my point of view. Okay. The same goes with volunteering. And as far as the benefit for an increasingly educated populace, there could be some benefit in that, but there's also been tremendous downfall because there are many students, I believe, that are taking out huge amounts of student loans when it is not needed for them, when maybe a trade school would have been a better option, or something along those lines that would have produced value for the economy that fit their needs and their lifestyle better. Okay, the third adjustment that GPI makes is quality of goods. Okay, it is going to adjust this number upward when goods are purchased that are longer lasting, and lowers the number for replaceable. I understand the thinking behind this because goods that last longer are obviously they're better. You have to purchase them less, but the replaceables are usually your cheap goods. Think of disposable razors and stuff like that. Okay, you're going to adjust the number down, but it's going to be hard to get rid of those disposable goods simply because of the price and the values that society places on the convenience of having them. Okay? The fourth adjustment being made is for crime. Crime definitely comes with a cost. There's the cost of the jail cells. There's a medical cost of treating the prisoners. There's the food cost. Okay. All of this gets factored into GDP. GPI is going to look at that negatively. Okay. Um, it actually links to something gross in GDP, an article by another group. And this is where I start to really have problems with the GPI when it comes to some of this stuff here, because I understand, yes, the cost of crime and the upkeep of prisons, it's a very touchy issue, and you may have strong feelings on it. But from an economic perspective, money is being spent there. Cash flow is being distributed. There are prison guards that are making money. That's how they support their families. Okay, they in turn are going out and buying consumer goods. Okay, maybe they're investing in something, in companies that are going to start producing something new. Okay, just to discount it because you do not like the way the money's flowing, or to look on it negatively and lower the index, may not be good for society. I get that, but from an economic perspective, it should not lower the economic value provided from this just because you do not like it. We can take it to the other spectrum. We can look at medical procedures, and there would be lots of people that would say, well, abortion is something gross. It should not be included in our GDP. But in fact, it's a service that is being provided, and the doctors and the nurses that work in that industry, they are making their jobs, and the same as the prison guards, they are getting money to provide for their family, and maybe they are investing it. Okay, so just because you think something is gross, it is no reason to rule it out in an economic, when you're reviewing what the economic position of the country is. Okay, 5, 6, and 7 all deal with the environment. Okay, it's negative for resource depletion. They claim pollution is good for GDP, and long-term environmental damage is looked on negatively, such as global warming and nuclear waste. All these things are legitimate concerns. And I would say people on both ends of the political spectrum have these concerns. In the past, the environmental concerns and the economic concerns were kind of kept separate, because in my mind and many people's minds, they are separate issues. Okay, you control the environment and you control the economy in two separate ways, but yet they are intertwined. The problem comes here with assigning a value to this. How are you going to say pollution is good for GDP? Actually, the article says this a lot, that stuff is good for GDP. GDP is just getting raw numbers and reporting them. Whether it's good or bad, or whether you think the activity is good or bad, GDP doesn't look at it whether it's good or bad. It's looking at the production and what it's actually doing. Okay? So the GPI, quote, uses environmental statistics and mathematical formulas to place a value on certain things, such as what is the value of the resource depletion? What is the value of pollution? What is it costing society? These are very subjective terms. And this, when you get into statistical models, estimates and educated guesses make a big difference. Okay, even being off by a half or a quarter% in some instances could lead to billions of dollars in differences by the time you get to the end of your calculations. Okay, so all these estimates, when it comes into the environment and factoring it into the the economic prosperity or recession of a country, I really have a hard time getting into that. And that leads me to the problem with some of the stuff that's being proposed politically nowadays, such as the Green New Deal. Not that I'm necessarily against the environmental packages that are in there and what they're trying to provide. I think that stuff can come through free market principles. Where it gets me is when they start trying to include environmental things with economic things. Because then you start getting forced regulations and forced things happening, and you lose the voluntary transactions between people. You break your theories of supply and demand, and the economy gets all out of whack. Okay, so I just wanted to give you guys something to think about. Please take some time. I'm going to put another post on the discussion board where you can respond to this and give me your thoughts. Just in a quick summary, the GPI, I think it's something interesting to look at. I don't put a lot of faith into it when it comes to predicting how the economy is going to behave because of all the subjective material into it. GDP does not provide an entire picture, detailed picture of the economy, but is a great indicator of the economy as a whole. And when GDP goes down, you can really feel the effects. And as GDP has been rising in the past few years, you can also feel the effects of that as wages are starting to increase and employment numbers are looking better and better all the time. As we move forward in the class, we are going to talk about fiscal policy and monetary policy and how the government and the Federal Reserve try to keep our economy in an equilibrium balance. I will try to post some more videos on interesting discussion board topics I put out. Thank you and have a great rest of your weekend.